We stand before the mighty Sphinx of Giza, a monument of stone bearing the body of a lion and the solemn gaze of a god. For generations, we have been told it was crafted under Pharaoh Khafre, a marvel of the Fourth Dynasty, raised some 4,500 years ago to guard the pyramids of Giza. The account is neat, tidy, and reassuring. Textbooks tell us of ramps, copper chisels, and laborers hauling immense limestone blocks under the pharaoh's divine decree. It is a tale of brilliance, of a civilization reaching its height. Yet, what if that story is incomplete? What if the Sphinx is far older than the pharaohs, older even than Egypt itself, a relic of a forgotten age when the earth was different? When rains swept across a fertile Sahara and a civilization with no name left its memory carved in stone. Welcome, seekers of hidden truth, to Mystery History for Sleep. I am Mr. H, your guide through the silent shadows of the past where secrets lie beneath desert sand and silence. Close your eyes and picture the Giza Plateau not as the barren desert of today, but as a flourishing, living land. Thousands of years ago, long before pyramids touched the sky, before the Nile became Egypt's lifeline, this was a region of grass, lakes, and endless monsoons. The Sahara was not a wasteland then, but a cradle of life where people thrived, and rock art showed herds of animals and rivers that are gone today. This was the African humid period between 7,000 and 4,000 BCE, when North Africa's climate nurtured a world beyond imagination. And some believe it was in this very time that the Sphinx was carved, not by Egyptians, but by a people lost to memory. In the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert Schoch studied the Sphinx and made an observation that changed the debate forever. He was no Egyptologist bound to recite the accepted dynastic timeline. He was a geologist, a reader of stone, a man who studied the Earth's scars. What he found in the Sphinx's enclosure was not the sharp horizontal erosion of wind and sand, the type that shaped the pyramids, but deep vertical cuts, wavy forms, and softened corners. These were the fingerprints of water. Not brief storms, but sustained heavy rainfall. Rainfall that flowed over rock for centuries, carving grooves and reshaping stone in ways only a wet climate could. To Schoch, the conclusion was undeniable. The Sphinx had endured rains that ended thousands of years before any pharaoh wore a crown. This finding shook the foundations of Egyptology. If the Sphinx shows weathering from an age when Egypt was green, then its origins predate the civilization to which it has been credited. The last time the Giza Plateau saw such rain was over 7,000 years ago, long before the Old Kingdom, before Egypt was united under Menes, before hieroglyphs ever told of kings and their monuments. If Schoch is correct, the Sphinx could be more than 10,000 years old, a silent witness to a chapter of human history we have never recorded. But this leads to a haunting question. Who carved this guardian of stone, and why has their legacy vanished? The standard narrative claims Khafre was its builder, the same ruler who raised Giza's second pyramid. His name has been tied to the Sphinx by a damaged statue and the assumption that its face resembles his own. Yet there is no inscription, no royal cartouche, no clear evidence linking Khafre to the monument. The case rests on circumstantial connections rather than proof. And when examined closely, the weaknesses only grow. The temples flanking the Sphinx, cut from limestone quarried around it, show no trace of the water erosion etched into the enclosure's walls. Their surfaces remain sharp, angular, and untouched by rains that shaped the Sphinx. This suggests the temples were added later, built, from the stone left behind, implying the Sphinx already stood when the pharaohs claimed it. Now pause and reflect. The Sphinx, hewn from living rock, required engineering of extraordinary scale. Over 1,000 tons of limestone were removed to bring its form to life, a task demanding advanced skill, planning, and labor. The builders followed the grain of the stone with remarkable precision, rivaling modern techniques. Yet unlike every other grand work in Egypt, the Sphinx bears no inscription, no dedication, no claim of power. Egyptian rulers were never known for humility. Their temples, obelisks, and statues proclaimed their divinity to the world. To find a monument of such size, aligned with cosmic precision to the equinox sunrise, yet lacking a single hieroglyph, naming its creator is not merely strange, it is staggering. And if the Sphinx predates the pharaohs, then the entire timeline of civilization comes into question. Mainstream history places monumental architecture around the dawn of the Old Kingdom, near 3100 BCE. But a Sphinx carved 7,000 years earlier would belong to a prehistoric age, a time we assume humanity lived simply, without the ability to carve landscapes with precision. This debate is about more than dating a single statue. It is about rewriting humanity's past, about questioning who we once were and what we were capable of. Could there have been a civilization lost to time, one with knowledge of stone, stars, and engineering that challenges our assumptions? It may sound extraordinary, but similar mysteries appear across the globe. Consider Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, raised 12,000 years ago, long before writing, long before farming as we know it. Its people moved stones weighing 20 tons, carved intricate animals, and aligned temples with the heavens. Or think of the underwater city of Yonaguni near Japan, where angled steps and terraces lie beneath the sea, dated to a time when oceans were lower, perhaps 10,000 years ago. These sites, like the Sphinx, defy the accepted timeline. The tidy progression of history we've been taught begins to unravel. These ideas suggest a world where advanced understanding existed long before we believed possible, only to be erased in some catastrophe, a flood, a sudden climate change, a collapse that buried their wonders beneath sand and sea. And then comes the tale of Atlantis, told by the Greek philosopher Plato more than 2,300 years ago. He spoke of a grand civilization that thrived 9,000 years before his time, a society of builders and seafarers that vanished in a single day and night of disaster. Could the Sphinx be a relic of such a people, a sentinel left to mark a sacred land? Scholars dismiss it as legend, yet legends often carry echoes of forgotten truths. The African humid period ended suddenly around 4000 BCE. The Sahara, once a green world, dried into desert, forcing people to settle along the Nile, where Egypt's civilization would soon rise. But what if the Sphinx had already been carved before that shift? A monument to a world already fading, created by builders who knew their time was short. This leads to a deeper, unsettling question. Why don't we know their names? Why is the Sphinx silent? Ancient Egyptians were tireless record keepers, chronicling kings, gods, victories, and rituals in hieroglyphs that still survive. Yet the Sphinx, the most iconic of their monuments, offers no inscription, no creator, no purpose written into stone. The silence feels intentional, as though someone wanted the truth obscured. The weathering tells one tale, while the missing words whisper another. Perhaps the builders chose mystery over recognition, eternity over fame. And here, the whispers grow louder. In the early 20th century, psychic Edgar Cayce claimed that beneath the Sphinx lay a hall of records, a chamber holding the wisdom of a lost civilization, texts, artifacts, even technology that could rewrite history. Decades later, in the 1980s and 2000s, ground-penetrating radar scans revealed anomalies beneath the Sphinx, cavities and voids suggesting artificial construction. Yet when scholars pressed to investigate, they were blocked with closed doors and official denials. Authorities dismissed the anomalies as cracks or meaningless fissures. But why the secrecy? Why the resistance to looking deeper beneath the guardian of Giza? Here the sand begins to shift. The mystery of the Sphinx is not only about stone and rain. It is about control over what knowledge is permitted, about what truths may have been buried, not only by time, but by deliberate choice. The water erosion, the absent inscriptions, the strange voids beneath the plateau, they converge to challenge the very foundations of our history. The Sphinx does not simply stand as a statue, it stands as a question. Who shaped it? Why is its purpose concealed? And what truths are we not meant to discover? If these mysteries already have you rethinking everything you were taught, consider this only the beginning. The shadows of Giza hold far more than what meets the eye. As night deepens, let the image linger. The Sphinx, half lion, half god, staring eternally at the rising sun. It has seen kingdoms rise and vanish, watched fertile rains turn to barren sand, and through it all, it has kept its silence. But silence is not absence. Silence is a presence, a waiting, a challenge to those who dare to listen. The Sphinx is more than stone. It is a warning that history is not as we've been told, that the past hides truths long ignored, and that reality may be far older and stranger than we're ready to face. So let us keep asking. Let us keep searching. Because the Sphinx is not the end of the story, but the first doorway into a labyrinth where memory itself has been buried beneath time, waiting for us to rediscover it. In our last journey, we stood before the Sphinx, its water-etched enclosure hinting at an age before the pharaohs, when rains nourished a green Sahara and a forgotten people carved a guardian to outlast their fading world. Tonight, our attention turns to the Great Pyramid itself, the towering heart of Giza, a monument that speaks not in words, but in numbers. Numbers so exact, so universal, they call into question everything we believe about history. What if the Great Pyramid was never a tomb nor a temple, but a kind of machine? Not one of gears or circuits, but of geometry, time, and cosmic knowledge, built to preserve wisdom through the fall of civilizations. Close your eyes, let the desert winds fade, and listen as the stones themselves whisper their secrets. The Great Pyramid of Giza rises more than 140 meters high. Constructed of 2.3 million limestone blocks, it embodies a vision nearly beyond comprehension. Each stone, weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons, was cut, transported, and set in place with accuracy that surpasses the crude tools we attribute to ancient Egypt, copper chisels, sledges, and raw manpower. Its base is leveled within just 2.1 centimeters across 230 meters, aligned to true north within 0.05 degrees. Even modern engineers, with lasers and GPS, struggle to match such precision. And yet we are told it was the project of a fourth dynasty, Pharaoh Khufu, around 2580 BCE. His name appears only once, scribbled in red on a hidden beam. But the pyramid's true story is not written in paint, nor in silence. It is encoded in its design, in its measures, its angles, and its alignments. Let us look at the numbers. Each side of the base measures about 230.4 meters, forming a nearly perfect square. Its original height, with capstone intact, was 146.6 meters. Divide the perimeter, 921.6 meters, by its height, and the result is 6.283, a figure astonishingly close to 2p, with an error under 0.1%. This is no accident of chance, it is deliberate. P, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, would not be formally defined until much later. Yet here, it is embodied in stone on a monumental scale. The slope of the pyramid, 51.84 degree, encodes another constant, the golden ratio, F, approximately 1.618. When the half-base length is compared to the height, the numbers align. Cultures worldwide have revered F for beauty and balance, but here it is, woven into geometry itself. The odds of a single structure encoding both P and F by chance are infinitesimal, and still, the code runs deeper. The pyramid seems to reflect the Earth itself. Multiply its height, 146.6 meters, by 43,200, and the result is 6,356,400 meters, within 99.7% of Earth's polar radius. Multiply the perimeter by the same factor, and you reach 39,931,200 meters, an almost perfect match to Earth's equatorial circumference. That number, $43,200, is no random multiplier. It links directly to the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 25,120 years to complete. Divide that cycle by 600, and you arrive at 43,200, the very scale connecting the pyramid's proportions to the size of our planet. This implies a grasp of astronomy and geodesy impossible without telescopes, calculus, or a spherical Earth model. And yet, the Great Pyramid embodies it. Inside, the mystery deepens. The so-called King's Chamber contains a granite coffer, its blocks quarried hundreds of miles away and joined with precision that modern masons struggle to equal. The acoustics of the chamber are remarkable. Sounds resonate as though engineered to amplify specific frequencies. The narrow shafts that extend outward from the chamber are aligned with cosmic targets. The southern shaft toward Orion's belt, the northern toward the pole star, not as seen today, but exactly as they were aligned around 2450 BCE. Such calculations require an ability to measure fractions of degrees, to track stellar movement across centuries, and to translate them into architectural design. No evidence of such tools or knowledge exists in the surviving Egyptian records. Yet the pyramid itself is undeniable proof. Who possessed this knowledge? The Egyptians of Khufu's dynasty were masters of practical geometry, measuring fields, tracking commerce, and predicting Nile floods. Their astronomy was rich, tied to calendars and rituals, but nowhere in their surviving texts do we find P-F or the measurements of Earth itself. Nowhere do we see precession mapped in numbers or cosmic alignments laid out in degrees, and still, the Great Pyramid stands, a silent witness that someone, somewhere, understood all of it. The Great Pyramid stands like a singularity, a spike, of knowledge that appeared fully formed and was never reproduced. Later pyramids, such as those of Khafra and Menkaure, lack its mathematical refinement. Their slopes are cruder, their alignments imprecise, their construction flawed. The bent Pyramid of Sneferu, built only decades earlier, had to be altered midway to prevent collapse. If the Great Pyramid was the product of centuries of expertise, why did that mastery disappear so suddenly? Why do later monuments reveal decline instead of progress? This question leads us to a striking possibility. What if the Great Pyramid was not built by the Egyptians at all, but inherited by them? What if it was the legacy of a lost civilization, one that carved its knowledge into stone as a safeguard against catastrophe? Think of it not as a tomb, but as a kind of time machine, not a device of gears or wires, but a monument designed to carry wisdom across the collapse of cultures, the fading of languages, the erasure of worlds. Numbers like P and F are eternal, constants, immune to translation. Unlike hieroglyphs, which require a Rosetta Stone to read, or papyrus, which decays to dust, geometry endures. By embedding these ratios into the pyramid's form, its makers created a code any advanced society could one day rediscover. This intent to preserve knowledge resonates across the ancient world. Stonehenge in England, built around 2500 BCE, aligns with solstices, locking astronomical cycles into its design. The colossal trilithons of Baalbek in Lebanon, some exceeding 800 tons, challenge modern engineering. The sunken structures of Yonaguni, possibly 10,000 years old, hint at cultures drowned by rising seas. These works, like the Great Pyramid, seem meant to outlast their creators, to speak in mathematics, scale, and alignment across ages. The Great Pyramid, with its precise codes, may be the ultimate time capsule, a record of truths left in plain sight. But why build so vast a monument, yet leave no name, no inscriptions, no boast of power? Egyptian pharaohs were never humble. Their tombs and temples overflow with cartouches, hymns, and scenes of divinity. Yet the Great Pyramid is mute. The only trace, a faint red cartouche of Khufu discovered in 1837, feels like an afterthought. Some even doubt its authenticity, noting that Howard Weiss, who claimed the find, faced pressure to link the pyramid to a known king. Even if genuine, a single scrawl cannot explain the absence of all else. No prayers, no afterlife maps, no ritual texts. This silence points to a purpose beyond Egyptian religion, beyond funerary tradition. Some argue the Great Pyramid was never a tomb at all. No mummy was found, no grave goods, not even a lid for the granite box in the so-called King's Chamber. Instead, its proportions and acoustic qualities suggest a function unknown, perhaps designed to amplify frequencies, to channel cosmic energy, or to anchor some principle we have yet to rediscover. The shafts, too narrow for human use, point with uncanny accuracy to stars, Orion's belt, the pole star, alignments more than symbolic, perhaps operational. Could the pyramid have been a tool, a device to interact with the universe through resonance, geometry, and harmony with natural laws? Then there is a stranger notion. In the 1960s, Swiss author Erich von Däniken proposed that monuments like the Great Pyramid may have been influenced by extraterrestrials, beings who passed knowledge to early humanity. Fantastic as it sounds, anomalies remain, a structure, aligned almost perfectly to true north, encoding planetary dimensions, and built with engineering seemingly beyond copper tools and manpower. Could the pyramid be a beacon, a marker left by others, or by humans armed with knowledge we've forgotten? Its lack of writing might even support this. Why carve in a local language when the message itself is written in mathematics, the one universal tongue? This leads to a sobering idea. Perhaps the pyramid was designed not just to honor a ruler, but to outlast a catastrophe. Not a mere flood, but the fall of civilization itself. The precession cycle, hidden in its ratios, hints at time scales stretching across tens of thousands of years. Its survival through earthquakes, conquests, and millennia suggests it was built to endure epochs, not dynasties. Its silence, its universality, its indifference to cultural markers, these all imply a message not for the Egyptians, but for whoever came after, for a civilization rising from ruin, rediscovering the stars. The pyramid offers a curriculum written in stone, a lesson in P, in F, in Earth's place within the cosmos. Seen this way, the Great Pyramid is not only a monument, but a question, a challenge, a warning. It does not ask what we know, but what we are willing to admit we do not. Its numbers, undeniable and enduring, tell us someone knew the constants that bind the universe. Were they Egyptians inheriting secrets from an older source? Were they a lost culture erased by disaster? Or were they something beyond our world, leaving behind a legacy too vast to claim? If these questions stir your wonder, stay with us, for the secrets of the pyramid are far from exhausted. The night is still young, and the Great Pyramid rises not as a tomb for a king, but as a time machine for truth. Its voice carved in numbers that outlast empires. The Great Pyramid feels like a rupture in history, a sudden leap of knowledge that appeared complete and was never repeated. Later pyramids, such as those of Khafra and Menkaure, lack the same sharp precision, their angles less exact, their alignments imperfect, their engineering compromised. The bent pyramid of Sneferu, built just decades earlier, had to be altered mid-construction to prevent collapse. If the Great Pyramid marked the peak of accumulated wisdom, why did that mastery fade so swiftly? Why do later monuments show decline instead of refinement? This opens the door to a daring idea. Perhaps the Great Pyramid wasn't an Egyptian creation at all, but something they inherited. A relic of an earlier world, one that carved its knowledge into stone as a safeguard against an impending disaster they foresaw. The concept of a time machine need not mean science fiction. Here, it can describe a monument designed to preserve truths through the fall of kingdoms, the loss of tongues, and the erasure of whole cultures. Mathematical constants like pi and phi never change, no matter the era or the people. Unlike hieroglyphs, which demand a Rosetta Stone, or papyrus which decays to dust, geometry endures. By encoding these numbers into its structure, the builders left a message that any future society advanced enough to measure could eventually read. This idea of storing wisdom is not unique to Egypt. Across the ancient world, we find monuments with similar intent. Stonehenge in Britain, built around 2500 BCE, aligns with solstices, marking the rhythms of the heavens. The colossal trilithons of Baalbek in Lebanon, some exceeding 800 tons, suggest engineering still unexplained. The underwater ruins of Yonaguni, possibly 10,000 years old, hint at a people erased by rising seas. Like Giza, these works feel designed to endure beyond their makers, speaking not through script, but through scale and alignment. The Great Pyramid's mathematics may be a kind of capsule, a vault of truths meant for a world that had forgotten them. Yet why hide knowledge so openly? Why create a monument so enduring yet leave no declaration, no name, no claim of authorship? Egyptian rulers boasted endlessly of their power, covering tombs and temples with cartouches, hymns, and praises to the gods. The Great Pyramid, in contrast, is silent. Its only mark is a faint cartouche of Khufu's name, tucked in an inaccessible chamber above the king's chamber, more like a whisper than a proclamation. Some even question its authenticity, noting Howard Weiss, who uncovered it in 1837, faced pressure to attribute the pyramid to a known king. Even if genuine, one painted name does little to explain the absence of funerary prayers, afterlife maps, or carved rituals. This silence suggests a purpose beyond Egyptian religion, beyond any single reign. Some researchers now argue it was never a tomb. No body was discovered, no treasures, no coffin lid, just a plain granite box in a chamber built with remarkable proportions and strange acoustics. Could it have been tuned to resonate with frequencies, aligned to channel cosmic energy, anchored to realities we barely begin to perceive? The narrow shafts pointing precisely to stars seem more than symbolic. Perhaps the pyramid was a tool, built to engage with the universe itself, through resonance, geometry, and celestial alignment. And then come stranger whispers. In the 1960s, author Erich von Däniken suggested such monuments might reflect contact with extraterrestrial visitors, beings who shared knowledge with early humanity. The notion sounds extreme, but the anomalies remain. Alignment nearly perfect to true north, dimensions encoding Earth's size, engineering far beyond copper tools and manual labor. Could it be a beacon, a marker from a civilization not of this Earth, or one that held knowledge we have since lost? The absence of written claims strengthens this case. Why carve in language when mathematics is the tongue of eternity? This leads to a chilling thought. What if the Great Pyramid was meant to endure not just dynasties, but the fall of civilizations themselves? Its proportions embed the precessional cycle of the heavens, stretching across tens of thousands of years. Its resilience, surviving quakes, conquest, and 4,500 years of time, suggests a design for epochs, not generations. Its silence makes it universal, a message not for Egypt alone, but for whoever would rise after disaster. A civilization rebuilding from ruin, lifting eyes back to the stars, might find in its ratios a hidden curriculum, a lesson in pi, phi, and Earth's place in the cosmos. The pyramid becomes less a tomb than a riddle, a mirror, a warning. It demands not belief, but humility. Its numbers, carved in stone, outlast empires, speaking of a people who knew the Earth's curves, the sky's rhythm, and the constants of the cosmos. Were they Egyptians drawing from forgotten teachers? Were they an erased civilization? Or something stranger, leaving a gift we still hesitate to claim? If such questions stir you, remember, the mysteries of the Great Pyramid are far from solved. The night is long, and the stone still waits. Not as a monument to a king, but as a time machine of knowledge, a vault of truths too vast for words, too enduring to die. That isn't robbery. It feels like erasure, too precise to be chance. Others argue the pyramid was simply a prototype, built before tombs carried elaborate decorations. Yet this explanation falters when faced with its sophistication. The Great Pyramid is anything but primitive. Its geometry is exact, its orientation to true north flawless, its inner architecture a feat of unmatched skill. The Grand Gallery, with its soaring corbelled ceiling, distributes weight with brilliance later builders failed to replicate. The eyed, narrow shafts from the king's chamber align with stars like Orion's belt, pointing to intentions that extend beyond earthly concerns. Later pyramids, those of Khafra or Menkaura, are smaller, less refined, and often structurally weak. The bent pyramid nearly collapsed, its slope altered midway to prevent disaster. In contrast, The Great Pyramid is perfection, an apex, not a beginning. If not a tomb, then what? The absence of funerary evidence forces us to reconsider its true role. The king's chamber, with its peculiar acoustics, may hint at an answer. Within it, even whispers seem to resonate as if deliberately engineered. Studies of its dimensions reveal harmonic ratios, creating echoes that linger unnaturally. Some researchers suggest it functioned as a resonance chamber designed to amplify sound or harness energy for purposes now lost. The dense granite, richer than the limestone around it, vibrates when struck by certain tones. Could this be more than coincidence? Perhaps the pyramid was crafted as an instrument to connect with forces unseen, cosmic, vibrational, or even spiritual. The astronomical design deepens the puzzle. The shafts, far too narrow for air, point precisely to celestial markers. Orion's belt in the south, the pole star in the north, visible around 2450 BCE. Such precision reveals knowledge of stellar motion and Earth's axis, concepts not recorded in ancient Egyptian texts. Its alignment with true north, within a fraction of a degree, suggests mastery of geophysics far beyond the practical sky-watching of farmers. Some scholars believe it was a cosmic observatory mapping cycles of the heavens. But why build such an eternal monument simply to observe? This invites a bolder hypothesis. The pyramid as a machine, not of wires, but of stone and design. Echoing ideas of Tesla, some theorists argue it could generate or channel energy, perhaps electromagnetic or acoustic. The quartz-rich granite of the king's chamber may act as a conductor or resonator, focusing natural energy. The pyramid's geometric form could concentrate these forces into a field beyond our ability to measure. In the 20th century, experiments with pyramid models suggested unusual effects: organic matter preserved, blades sharpened. Though controversial, they fuel the speculation. If true, the Great Pyramid may have been a technology, not a tomb, its purpose lost with its makers. Yet the enigma stretches further. Could its perfection suggest knowledge not born of Earth? Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods proposed that extraterrestrial visitors guided the builders, sharing advanced mathematics and engineering. The pyramid's silent corridors, flawless alignments, and sheer mass feed this possibility. Why else would a civilization leave behind something so immense, yet so devoid of cultural context? Was it a beacon to the stars, or a relic from beings who knew they would not remain? The idea strains belief, yet the pyramid itself strains the limits of what seems possible. A more grounded yet equally profound interpretation is that the pyramid encodes knowledge instead of housing death. Its lack of hieroglyphs, its silence, may be deliberate, built to speak to any age through mathematics and proportion. Papyrus decays, languages die, but geometry endures. Ratios like pi and phi are embedded in its structure, universal constants, intelligible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Perhaps it was a safeguard against catastrophe, a monument designed to outlast floods, wars, and forgetting. Instead of preserving a king's name, it preserves a map of the cosmos. Here lies the essence of the mystery. The Great Pyramid behaves unlike any tomb. It lacks the rituals of Egyptian death, the markings of pharaohs, the echoes of religion. It stands apart, immense and inscrutable, alien even to its culture. Its only inscription, a faint cartouche of Khufu, is a whisper against a monument that roars. If built for a king, why so empty? If built for gods, Why so silent? If built for us, what are we meant to learn? The pyramid will not answer. It only waits, its stones heavy with secrets still untold. If this unsettles the stories you've heard, remember there are more shadows waiting in Giza's sands. As you drift into sleep, imagine yourself in the king's chamber once more, surrounded by granite alive with intent, breathing with ancient purpose. The silence itself feels alive, the stones pressing down with the weight of unspoken riddles. The Great Pyramid is no mere tomb nor a temple, but a vessel, a machine, a map, a memory. It was crafted to endure long after its makers vanished, to speak not in words, but in the language of angles, resonance, and form. Whoever raised it, whatever their intent, left behind a challenge, to look beyond the surface stories, to hear the silence, and to seek the truth hidden where a king's body should rest, but does not. One relic deepens this mystery, a weathered limestone slab that whispers of restoration rather than creation. The inventory stele, discovered near the shadow of the Sphinx, declares that Khufu, the pharaoh credited with the Great Pyramid, did not build the monuments of Giza. Instead, he found them already ancient, revered, and sought only to preserve their power. Close your eyes. Let the desert wind move through you, and imagine how a single forgotten stone might rewrite history. The year was 1858 when French archaeologist Auguste Mariette knelt at the Sphinx's base. He wasn't seeking a great revelation, merely clearing away layers of sand during a routine survey. Yet his workers uncovered a broken slab of limestone. Plain in appearance, unadorned by gold or jewels, its surface etched with fading hieroglyphs. At first, it seemed ordinary, but once translated, the text sent shockwaves through Egyptology, reverberations quietly muted ever since. This stele did not glorify a pharaoh's conquests or divine mandate. Instead, it told a quieter, stranger tale, that Khufu, ruler of Egypt's fourth dynasty, did not carve the Sphinx or erect the pyramids. He found them weathered with age and devoted himself to their care. Unlike the bold proclamations etched on most monuments, where kings immortalized themselves in stone, through boasts of power, lineage, and divine right, the inventory stele speaks with humility, even reverence. It records how Khufu encountered the Sphinx buried beneath the sands, eroded yet still commanding. Rather than claiming its creation, he restored it, clearing away the dunes and building temples nearby in devotion to its guardian force. The text even invokes Isis, goddess of magic, as mistress of the pyramid, and mentions a now-lost temple beside the Sphinx. Most striking of all, it lists offerings and shrines Khufu dedicated, not as a builder imposing authority, but as a caretaker tending to something far older. This detail is monumental. In ancient Egypt, stone was theology, every monument a statement of divine order and royal legitimacy. To claim a structure was to claim divine favor. To leave such a structure unclaimed yet sacred was almost unthinkable. And yet the stele suggests that even Khufu's priests accepted the Sphinx as a relic from an age before their king, a sacred inheritance that demanded respect rather than ownership. If the very ruler we credit with Giza's grandeur saw himself, not as creator but restorer, what does that mean for the pyramids themselves? Could the entire Giza complex, the Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, the temples, be remnants of a civilization predating the pharaohs, absorbed into Egyptian culture as an inheritance? The implications shift everything. If the Sphinx was already ancient, In Khufu's time, then the Great Pyramid, aligned with its gaze, may also belong to a deeper antiquity. Traditional chronology sets its construction around 2580 BCE, a triumph of the Old Kingdom. But the stele hints at another possibility, that Egypt's most iconic monuments were not born from Khufu's ambition, but rediscovered by him. The relics whisper of a forgotten age, challenging the very core of Egyptology, which rests on the belief that Giza's wonders were born from the genius of the Fourth Dynasty. But what if they were inherited, built by an older civilization long erased from memory? In that case, Egypt becomes not the origin, but a layer covering something older, deliberately obscured. Yet here, the silence of the desert grows heavier. The inventory stele, despite its explosive message, was quietly pushed aside. After discovery, it was placed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it remains in near obscurity, seldom displayed and never highlighted in major exhibitions. Scholars dismissed it as propaganda from the 26th dynasty, over 2,000 years after Khufu's reign, created by priests with unclear motives. They claimed it was fiction, crafted for political reasons now lost to us. Textbooks give it barely a mention, treating it as an oddity rather than a source. The rejection is so absolute, so uniform. It feels less like scholarship and more like a decision to bury an inconvenient truth. But pause for a moment. Why would priests invent a tale that weakens Khufu's legacy? Egyptian culture obsessed over glorifying pharaohs, especially foundational kings like Khufu, forever tied to the greatest monument on earth. Retroactive myths were common, but always to elevate rulers, never to diminish them. The inventory stele does the opposite. It paints Khufu as a restorer of older gods, not their equal. If it were propaganda, it would be among the strangest in history, undermining a legendary king's divine authority instead of strengthening it. Such contradictions invite suspicion. Why write such a tale unless some measure of truth lingered within it, too dangerous to embrace? Egyptologists' dismissal creates its own paradox. Other late-period texts are embraced when they support the traditional timeline. Yet this one, because it opposes it, is labeled unreliable. Such selectivity smacks of intellectual gatekeeping, protecting a neat chronology while silencing inquiry. The stele's words suggest the Sphinx, and perhaps the pyramids, were already standing when Khufu came. This alone threatens to unravel the accepted story of Egypt. The pharaohs, then, were not the architects of Giza's wonders, but caretakers, inheriting a legacy they could never fully claim. If true, who were the real builders? What knowledge had they mastered? And why was it buried beneath another story? This puzzle echoes beyond Egypt. In Sumer, the Enuma Elish speaks of temples and towers tied to gods older than memory, restored by kings but not raised by them. The Epic of Gilgamesh recalls Uruk's walls, said to have been built by divine hands before human rulers. Could the inventory stele reflect the same pattern, where younger civilizations claimed older sacred monuments, weaving them into myths to legitimize their rule? The stele's reference to Isis as mistress of the pyramid is especially haunting. Isis was rarely linked to monuments so directly. Her presence suggests a significance reaching far beyond Khufu's reign, tied to forces predating his dynasty. And then there is what the stone withholds. It is broken, weathered, incomplete. It speaks of Khufu's restorations, his temples, his offerings, but says nothing of the original builders. That silence feels deliberate, as though the stone was designed to honor but never reveal. Perhaps earlier texts, now lost, named the true creators, a civilization erased by time or by design. The stele's survival feels accidental, a fragment that slipped through the cracks, a whisper meant to stay unheard. As the mystery deepens, the inventory stele ceases to be just an artifact. It becomes a challenge to everything we think we know of Giza. It tells us Khufu, the so-called builder, may have been nothing more than a pilgrim, kneeling before monuments already ancient. It tells us the Sphinx and perhaps the pyramid belong to a sacred landscape far older than Egypt, and it hints that someone, somewhere, wanted this truth to vanish, buried in sand and silence, locked away in a museum, dismissed as myth. As you drift into dreams, picture Khufu himself standing before the Sphinx, its vast stone gaze stretching beyond him toward horizons unknown. The inventory. Stele whispers from that timeless silence. The past is not what you believe. The truth lies deeper, hidden beneath the sand. Tonight we journey 1,000 years forward, to another story carved in stone, when a prince never meant to be king lay in the shadow of the Sphinx and dreamed of gods. The dream stele of Thutmose IV tells a tale of promises buried in sand. But more than myth, it too hints at truths that shake the ground beneath history, foundations of Egypt's story. Even those who inherited its sands forgot the Sphinx. Rest. Now let the desert stillness surround you, and listen as stone murmurs of secrets lost to time. It is around 1400 BCE, during the 18th dynasty, an age of wealth and empire. The Giza plateau, crowned by the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx, should have been a sanctuary of devotion, the heart of Egypt's sacred order. Yet something is wrong. The Sphinx, that immense sentinel of stone, lies abandoned. Its body is buried in dunes, with only the head and chest visible. Priests no longer serve it. No rituals honor its watch. No inscriptions explain its silence. This is not the celebrated guardian of Giza we imagine, but a forgotten relic, disregarded by the very culture that tradition claims carved it under Khafra just 8 centuries earlier. How could a monument so massive, so bound to Egypt's divine world, be surrendered to the desert's grasp? This question ushers us into a tale carved not in myth, but in granite, between the Sphinx's great paws. Prince Thutmose, the younger son of Pharaoh Amenhotep II, was never expected to rule. His elder brothers held the path to kingship, secured by the order of birth and the god's will. Yet during a hunt upon the Giza plateau, Thutmose sought rest in the shade of the Sphinx's half-buried form. There, between its paws, he slept, sand piled high around him, concealing the lion's body. What followed is inscribed upon the dream stele, still standing today, words capturing the moment his fate turned. In his dream, the Sphinx spoke. It named itself Horemakhet, the god of the horizon, guardian of dawn. Its tone was weary, not exalted. It lamented the centuries of neglect, the sands choking its throat, the offerings long forgotten. Day after day it had watched the sunrise alone, its sanctity unacknowledged. The god offered the prince a pact. If Thutmose would clear away the sands, restore its shrines, and renew its worship, the throne of Egypt would be his, not as a prize of ambition, but as a duty of devotion. Thutmose agreed. He summoned workers, cleared the dunes, and uncovered the Sphinx's full form, for the first time in generations. He gave offerings of incense, gold, and prayer, reviving a priesthood to keep the cult alive. Not long after, through means unrecorded, Thutmose became Pharaoh Thutmose IV, ruler of Egypt, a destiny rewritten by stone and dream. The dream stele was raised to commemorate this covenant, not merely as propaganda, but as testimony to a forgotten god's return. Yet this story is not just one of kingship. It exposes fractures in Egypt's memory. If Khafra built the Sphinx, as tradition claims, how could less than a millennium erase its worship entirely? Egypt preserved king lists over 1,000 years, long carved names and deeds into tombs and papyri. And yet here stood the Sphinx, beside the Great Pyramid, with no cult, no calendar, no place in its sacred order. It had vanished not only under sand, but in the mind of Egypt itself. Even the stele's tone is strange. Royal inscriptions normally thunder of triumph and divine glory, yet this one speaks softly, almost personally. The god complains of sand, silence, loneliness. It describes the work itself, the dunes, the stone's state, the struggle of excavation, details unusual for royal texts, which prefer cosmic grandeur. Such specifics hint at reality too plain to be invention. But there is also absence. The upper third of the stele, where perhaps the Sphinx's builder was once named, is missing. The break is clean, as though cut, not worn. Perhaps long ago someone removed what might have threatened accepted stories. What survives confirms Thutmose's rise and the divine bargain, yet denies us knowledge of the monument's origin. Was it omission or deliberate silence? Scholars often dismiss the dream stele as mere propaganda, a myth woven to justify Thutmose's unexpected rise to power. Yet this explanation feels fragile. For such a tale to work as propaganda, the Sphinx itself had to be forgotten, its meaning lost even to those who supposedly carved it. Why would a prince tie his legitimacy to a monument unremembered by his people, unless its power came from something far older than his dynasty? Here, a deeper question emerges. If the Sphinx was neglected by the 18th dynasty, what does that imply about its origins? In Mesopotamia, writings like the Epic of Gilgamesh describe ancient structures credited to gods or heroes of an age beyond. Memory. Could the Sphinx belong to a similar tradition, an inheritance from a world before Egypt's kings, revered yet left unclaimed? The stele's invocation of Harakti, the horizon god, links the Sphinx to the eternal sun cycle, a cosmic symbol predating even Egyptian religion. Perhaps it was a site of sanctity long before pharaohs ruled, its purpose so profound that they could only venerate it, never claim to have created it. The dream stele's silence about the Sphinx's builder echoes the silence of the monument itself. No inscriptions adorn its body. No cartouche proclaims its maker. This omission, like that of the pyramids, feels intentional, as though anonymity shielded a truth too sacred or too perilous to record. Or perhaps the builders were of a civilization so remote that even by Egypt's rise, their names were already lost to time. The stele hints at the latter, that the Sphinx was a riddle even to Thutmose, a voice speaking from before history, calling out for remembrance from a prince who merely stumbled upon its presence. As we follow this mystery deeper, the dream stele becomes a mirror to our own questions. It reminds us that the Sphinx, now eternal in stone, was once abandoned and swallowed by sand. It tells us of a prince who heard not triumph, but sorrow, a plea from a forgotten god, yearning to be freed. It shows that Egypt, with all its meticulous records and devotion, could let its greatest monument vanish from memory. And as you sink toward sleep, imagine resting between the Sphinx's paws, warm sand beneath you, its silent gaze fixed on a horizon older than memory itself. The dream stele is not just the tale of a king, it is the cry of a forgotten god, and the lingering question, what else have we lost? And perhaps more unsettling, who ensured we did? We drift now beneath the Giza plateau into shadowed corridors and sealed chambers where stone guards secrets older than the pyramids above. Hidden tunnels, voids, and buried halls whisper of a purpose far greater than tombs, a purpose deliberately concealed. Lie back. Let the silence of the desert draw you deeper. Follow me now into the hidden dark beneath Giza. The Giza Plateau is not only a field of stone giants shimmering beneath the sun, it is also the lid of a vast labyrinth, a secret world carved beneath. The desert floor. For over a century, explorers have whispered of strange discoveries below the pyramids and the Sphinx, cavities too geometric to be natural, shafts too precise to be accidental, chambers whose very design resists definition. Scattered accounts preserved in faded journals and half-erased maps paint the image of a plateau that is hollow, deliberately carved and veiled from the world above. And yet, whenever these stories rise to the surface, they are buried again, sealed off, denied, or dismissed. The question is not simply what lies below Giza, but why we are not allowed to know. One of the most compelling of these features is the Osiris shaft, found near the causeway of Khafra's pyramid. This vertical tunnel plunges over 30 meters, into bedrock, less a tomb than a descent into another realm. Divided into 3 levels, it grows stranger with each step downward. The first chamber is small, accessible only by a narrow crawl demanding specialized equipment. The second is drowned in groundwater, an opaque barrier preserving what waits beneath. The third, deepest of all, opens into a broad chamber with 6 niches carved in symmetry, their precision equal to the stone mastery of the pyramids themselves. At the chamber's heart lies a stone box often labeled a sarcophagus, yet it resists that name. No traces of a body, no funerary relics, no offerings of the dead. The walls, smooth and undecorated, bear the marks of tools applied with careful consistency, as if a single team labored with purpose. The acoustics defy expectation. Whispers carry perfectly, while louder voices are dulled, as though the chamber was tuned to sound itself. This is no typical burial. Even the tombs of minor nobles overflowed with inscriptions and ritual objects. Here, there is only silence, precision, and a function unnamed. Some claim it was built as a symbolic tomb of Osiris, god of the underworld tied to later cults. Yet its depth, its perfection, and its emptiness suggest something older, something that predates even Egypt's gods. Today, the shaft is closed to the public, rarely studied and almost never spoken of. If it is merely an empty chamber, why the secrecy? The answer may lie not in what it holds, but in what it implies. That Giza's underground world is vaster and more deliberate than history admits. The Osiris shaft is but a single fragment of the hidden design. In the 19th century, explorers like E.A. Wallace Budge described chambers far beneath Giza, extending well beyond what any tomb demanded. Budge wrote of deliberate passages and cavities, too precise to be natural, too expansive for burials alone. Even earlier, during Napoleon's 1798 expedition, scholars mapped a network of subterranean corridors, stairways, and chambers linking the pyramids and the Sphinx in ways that suggested a master plan. These maps, drawn long before tourism reshaped the plateau, reveal features missing from modern records. Some passages were filled with rubble, sealed as if on purpose. Others remained open, as if tended long after their creation. Dismissed as exaggerations of overzealous travelers, these reports nonetheless remain. Drawings and notes scattered in archives, whispering of a Giza never meant for open eyes. 1926. American archaeologist Herbert Eustace Winlock wrote of catacombs below the plateau. Walls neatly carved, stairways descending far deeper than tombs required, passages arranged with geometric clarity rather than the chaos of natural caves. His descriptions hint at more than burials, an infrastructure, a foundation, perhaps even a hidden architecture of purpose unknown. Yet no museums display models of these catacombs, no textbooks teach of their design. The scholarly world dismisses them as cracks, incomplete shafts, or errors of imagination. But the steady consistency of these accounts, spanning centuries and cultures, makes such dismissal feel less like skepticism and more like suppression. The most compelling evidence came in 2008 when Egyptian researchers used ground-penetrating radar to peer beneath the Giza plateau. What they found stunned even the scientists: a web of tunnels, voids, and chambers stretching below the pyramids and the Sphinx. Some of these matched the old maps made by Napoleon's scholars in 1798, confirming that early explorers had not imagined things. Others were entirely new, vast geometric cavities that defied any explanation as natural erosion. Beneath the Sphinx, the scans revealed hollow spaces with straight edges and regular forms, clear signs of artificial construction. Under the Great Pyramid, they detected hidden chambers that were not connected to any known passages, hinting at an earlier phase of building, perhaps even before the pyramid itself. Rare photographs from these surveys showed cut stone, rough, steps and archways carved deep in the bedrock, features that didn't resemble Egyptian tomb shafts or the polished masonry of the pyramids above. It was evidence of something different, something older. And then, silence. The Supreme Council of Antiquities announced there was nothing there. No mention of the scans, no acknowledgement of the photographs, no discussion of the maps. Access was revoked, and the findings buried under bureaucratic denials. Journalists who pressed for answers were dismissed, while tunnels that had been entered and measured were suddenly sealed again. This was not the first time. In the 1930s, workers excavating beneath the Sphinx reportedly discovered a chamber between its paws. They described it as clearly artificial, cut into the stone with purpose. Yet it was quickly filled in, with no official record ever published. Decades later, radar scans confirmed a hollow space in the same spot, but once again, independent researchers were barred from investigating. The official stance has never changed. Nothing important lies beneath Giza. But when photographs, maps, and radar data are ignored, that is not archaeology, it is erasure. The pattern raises a troubling question. What lies beneath Giza that is so threatening it must be hidden? The underground network suggests a design far beyond tombs. The strange acoustics of the Osiris shaft, the sharp geometry of the voids, and the deliberate precision of buried passages point to an engineered system with a purpose we don't yet understand. Some propose it was ritualistic, a series of resonance chambers designed to manipulate sound and consciousness, like Malta's hypogum, where ancient builders tuned stone chambers to induce trance states. Others believe it was a vault, not for gold or treasure, but for knowledge. The mythical Hall of Records, described by Edgar Cayce, said to hold the secrets of a lost civilization. The most unsettling possibility, however, is that these chambers predate the pharaohs entirely. If the Sphinx itself shows signs of water erosion from a climate over 7,000 years ago, perhaps the tunnels and chambers belong to the same forgotten builders, a people capable of reshaping bedrock, carving structures designed to outlast a catastrophe they foresaw. The tool marks don't always match Egyptian methods. Some angles and cuts suggest techniques we no longer recognize, hints of a lost technology. The flooded second level of the Osiris shaft, preserved in water for millennia, might still hold untouched evidence. Yet it remains sealed, its secrets drowned in silence. This leads to a darker truth. The suppression feels intentional. If Giza rests upon an older foundation, if its wonders were inherited rather than created by the Egyptians, it reshapes the timeline of human civilization. It suggests that the pharaohs were not the originators of their greatest monuments, but custodians of something far older. And so again and again the narrative is defended. Evidence disappears. Discoveries are denied. Why? What truth is so dangerous that it must never see the light of day? Perhaps it isn't just the tunnels and chambers themselves, but what they represent. A chapter of human history we are not yet prepared to face. A civilization we are not meant to remember. As you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself descending into the Osiris shaft. The stone is cool beneath your fingertips. The air is heavy, ancient, carrying the weight of forgotten ages. The chambers below Giza are not voids at all, but questions, cut into the bedrock, waiting patiently for answers. They whisper of a time before kings, before gods, when the plateau was shaped with a purpose we can only guess. The network beneath, the pyramids, is a hidden map of memory, a labyrinth where history itself lies buried, waiting for someone brave enough to walk its paths. In 1993, that courage came not from a human, but from a small machine. A wheeled robot named Upuaut, the opener of the ways, after an ancient Egyptian god, was designed by German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink. Its mission seemed simple: to inspect the Great Pyramid's mysterious air shafts, narrow, passages too small for any person to crawl through. These shafts extend from the Queen's chamber, steeply angled, just 20 centimeters wide, with walls polished so smooth that even modern tools would struggle to achieve it. Archaeologists had long thought them symbolic, aligned with the stars or intended as pathways for a pharaoh's soul, but what Upuaut II discovered was anything but ordinary. As the robot climbed the southern shaft, stretching over 60 meters, its tiny camera broadcast images that shocked the world. At the shaft's end stood a perfectly cut stone slab, fitted seamlessly into the passage, with 2 copper pins protruding from its surface like silent guardians. This was no collapse, no rough ending. It was a deliberate door, sealed for thousands of years. The footage was mesmerizing. The shaft's limestone walls gleamed with precision. Each block joined so tightly there was no mortar, no visible tool marks, as if carved with a method beyond our understanding. Then came the slab itself, a flawless rectangle blocking the wide path, its 2 copper pins catching the light. They were too small to be hinges, too awkward to be handles. Were they symbols of a sacred boundary, or markers pointing to something beyond? The implications were staggering. Here was undeniable proof of hidden structures inside the Great Pyramid, spaces deliberately sealed since its construction. For the first time, the possibility of unknown chambers was no longer speculation, but reality. Headlines around the world declared a new age of discovery. Could the door lead to a secret chamber, a vault of forgotten knowledge, or something stranger still? But just as the world's curiosity reached its peak, everything stopped. Gantenbrink's work was suddenly shut down. His contract revoked, his access denied, by order of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. Picture Cairo in the late 1800s, its narrow streets alive with whispers of discovery. The air was thick with dust and anticipation, as European collectors and scholars wandered its markets, searching for treasures of Egypt's forgotten past. Monasteries guarded scrolls, merchants offered fragments of stone and papyrus, and adventurers claimed to have found relics too strange to explain. It was the golden age of Egyptology, but also a time of secrecy. Artifacts disappeared into private collections, stories of unusual finds were rewritten, and the line between history and legend grew blurred. Museums in London, Paris, and Berlin filled their halls with wonders from the Nile, yet some pieces never saw the light of day. They were hidden, locked away, or quietly dismissed as curiosities that did not fit the official story. Cairo became more than a city. It was a gateway to mysteries the world was not ready to face. Each excavation, each papyrus, each carving held echoes of something older than Egypt itself. And just as with the sealed doors inside the Great Pyramid, silence often followed revelation. A silence not of absence, but of choice. A decision to keep certain truths buried until another age, when every relic, every fragile papyrus seemed to whisper secrets of a world long gone. A quiet Coptic monastery guarded something rare. Hidden far from Cairo's busy streets, a weary monk welcomed a European traveler, perhaps Austrian, perhaps French, and offered him a bundle of manuscripts. These were no ordinary writings. For centuries, monasteries like this had carried fragments of wisdom across time, copying and recopying lines through invasions, wars, and silence. Among them was one scroll unlike the rest. Written in Sahidic Coptic, it carried echoes of phrases, even older, traces of a language beyond the monk's knowledge. He spoke of it with reverence, describing words that told of a Nile flowing in another age, before its curve, before its delta, before kingdoms rose. The scroll described 3 immense monuments, not tombs, but luminous beacons aligned with the stars. They were sealed not for the dead, but to preserve memory itself, a legacy left by hands that lived before history had a name. The traveler carried the scroll to Europe, where scholars of the 19th century prepared to study it. Linguists hoped to unlock its dialect, historians to compare its verses, archaeologists to match its descriptions to stone. For them it promised to be a key, perhaps a Rosetta Stone for a chapter of human history never read. Its words suggested pyramids not as graves, but as repositories of knowledge built to outlast a forgotten catastrophe. But before its meaning could be revealed, loss struck. Some say a fire consumed the collector's study, reducing the scroll to ash. Others place the tragedy in a European archive, perhaps Vienna, perhaps Lyon. The details blur, as if meant to. No copy survived, no sketches, no notes, nothing. Scholars of that time took great care to preserve fragile works, and yet this one, the most precious, disappeared completely. Only a letter quoting the monk's cryptic phrase remained. Before, the Nile knew its place before words were spoken. To some, this was proof of myth or forgery, just another tale sold in the busy trade of relics. But others found the loss too perfect, too convenient. Why would a fake need to vanish before it was studied? Why ensure silence before voices could be heard? This was not the first time. Stones near Aswan once listed kings before Egypt's first, Pharaoh, lost when an earthquake brought the wall down. A German scholar claimed to have translated a papyrus of resonant stones west of the Nile, only to die in war, his notes scattered. Each loss alone could be chance. Together they trace a pattern, a hand unseen, ensuring that certain truths remain buried. The Coptic scroll belongs to that pattern, not destroyed by the slow work of time, but by fire, right when it might have spoken too clearly. Its words linger, only in suggestion, yet their weight is haunting. If the pyramids were indeed vaults of memory built before the river's modern path, they connect to every other clue we have uncovered. The sphinx shaped by ancient rains, the pyramids marked with cosmic codes, the tunnels beneath Giza whispering of another design. It is as though an older world once sealed its wisdom in stone, leaving it to wait, silent, until someone was ready to listen. When every fragment, every papyrus promised to reveal the mysteries of a civilization that had fascinated the world, a story began to unfold. In a quiet Coptic monastery, hidden far from the chaos of Cairo's streets, a collector, perhaps Austrian, perhaps French, encountered an elderly monk. This monk, the guardian of a small collection of manuscripts, held more than just ordinary writings. For centuries, Coptic monasteries had been sanctuaries of knowledge, safeguarding fragments of early Christian and pre-Islamic texts through wars, invasions, and time's relentless erosion. The monk claimed his manuscripts contained treasures, passed down through generations, works that survived empires collapsing, copied and recopied by devoted hands. Among them lay a scroll that stood apart. Written in Sahidic Coptic, a dialect of Egypt's early Christian period, it carried traces of phrases older than the monk himself could understand, hints of a language that predated even Coptic. What it contained, as described to the collector, was astonishing. It spoke of a land along the Nile before its current path, before the river's great curve, before the delta had formed. It described 3 vast stone beacons, not called pyramids, but structures aligned with the stars, sealed not as tombs but as vaults of memory. The text called them ancient, built before language itself, before the Nile shifted its course, before Egypt's kings rose to power. When pressed for clarity, the monk's words were cryptic. They were built before words, before the river knew its place. This was no tale of pharaohs or gods. It was a vision of a world before recorded history. The collector purchased the scroll along with others and brought it to Europe, where eager Orientalist scholars awaited. The 19th century was an era of careful scholarship, with universities and museums deeply invested in translating ancient manuscripts. Linguists would have pored over the Coptic script, historians compared its accounts with known records, and archaeologists sought to match its descriptions to physical sites. The scroll seemed to promise a Rosetta Stone of sorts, a key to an unwritten chapter of humanity's past. Its references to pyramids as beacons and vaults of memory suggested they were not funerary monuments, but repositories of knowledge, constructed to endure a catastrophe that had erased their builders. If true, it would dismantle the conventional timeline of Egyptian civilization, placing the pyramids in a prehistoric world, linked to a nameless culture. But before a single word could be translated, tragedy struck, or so the story goes. The eye. Details remain maddeningly vague. Some claim a fire consumed the collector's private study, reducing the scroll to ash. Others say the manuscript was destroyed in a blaze at an archive, perhaps in Vienna or Lyon. The uncertainty itself feels suspicious, as if the account was meant to fade into obscurity. What is known is simple. The scroll was lost, along with much of the collector's collection, in a fire that left no copies, no drawings, no detailed notes. This was no ordinary loss. By the 19th century, scholars knew well the fragility of ancient manuscripts. Vital texts were routinely copied, sketched, or described in detail to prevent disasters. The Nag Hammadi Library, another treasure of Coptic writings, survived precisely because of such precautions. Yet this scroll, potentially the greatest discovery of its time, disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a second-hand letter quoting the monk's cryptic words about the Nile and the three beacons. Its disappearance feels almost deliberate, perfectly timed. A document that might have placed the pyramids in a world before Egypt itself was destroyed at the very moment experts were ready to unlock its secrets. The letter, the lone surviving reference, offers little more than a shadow of meaning, as if the scroll's existence was never meant to be more than a whisper. Mainstream historians dismiss the tale as error or fabrication. They suggest the scroll, if it existed, was likely a late Gnostic myth, an allegorical retelling of Egypt's mythic origins. They also point to the thriving 19th century market in counterfeit relics, where eager Europeans often purchased forgeries. Yet this explanation feels more like containment than clarity, a way of keeping uncomfortable questions hidden. If it were a forgery, why destroy it before scholars could test its authenticity? Why ensure that no linguist or historian would ever examine its contents? Its destruction fits too neatly into a troubling pattern. Across history, disruptive texts vanish at critical moments. In the 1700s, French scholars reported an inscription near Aswan listing kings older than Menes, the so-called first pharaoh of Egypt. It could have pushed Egypt's history back by millennia, yet the wall collapsed in an earthquake, the rubbings lost, the site never re-examined. In the early 20th century, a German linguist claimed to have deciphered a Nubian papyrus mentioning stones of resonance west of the Nile, only to die in World War I, his notes scattered beyond recovery. Individually, each loss may seem like accident. Together, they suggest design, an invisible hand ensuring certain truths never survive long enough to be accepted. The Coptic scroll, with its testimony of pyramids before language, fits seamlessly into this pattern. It wasn't lost to time's decay but to fire, consumed at the very moment it might have revealed too much. What makes its absence chilling is what it implies. If it truly described pyramids as memory vaults built before the Nile's modern course, it would align with clues we already possess. The Sphinx's water erosion pointing to rains thousands of years before pharaohs, the Great Pyramid's mathematical codes encoding Earth's dimensions and cosmic cycles, and the hidden structures beneath Giza suggesting infrastructure older than Egypt itself. This scroll might have been the key tying those anomalies together, naming the lost civilization that once built wonders in stone, sealing knowledge for a world they knew was fading. The monk's phrase, "before the Nile changed," lingers, as a haunting echo, hinting at a forgotten epoch buried beneath history itself. The reports from the 19th century explorers, from Wallace Budge to Napoleon's team, describe strange spaces beneath Giza, precise passages and geometric layouts that hint at something beyond royal tombs, perhaps infrastructure built for a civilization still unknown to us. Yet the official statement declared, "There is nothing there." The photos of carved tunnels, radar scans showing artificial voids, and historic maps were either dismissed or locked away. Access was quietly revoked, researchers turned aside, and those findings disappeared from public record. It wasn't the first time. In the 1930s, a chamber beneath the Sphinx was uncovered, only to be filled back in without further study. In 1993, Rudolf Gantenbrink's robot, UPWAT-2, found a sealed door deep inside the pyramid, and the mission was stopped. In 2002, another robot discovered yet another door, but exploration was halted once again. Each breakthrough ends with the same outcome: the door to discovery quietly shut. The Supreme Council of Antiquities, backed by Egypt's government, guards Giza with absolute authority. No excavation happens without permits, funds, and approvals tied to politics and economy. Tourism sustains Egypt, and the image of the pyramids as the crowning achievement of pharaonic genius brings millions every year. To admit they may belong to a civilization older than Egypt itself could shake the foundation of national identity and the economy it sustains. But some believe the silence runs deeper. They whisper that UNESCO and other global institutions have their own reasons to preserve the established story, to reveal that history is wrong, that human progress isn't linear, could unsettle the very framework of how we view ourselves. And beyond that lies a stranger thought: the possibility that Giza's precision, its alignment with Orion's belt, its encoding of pi and phi, may point to knowledge beyond human reach. Could the hidden chambers hold evidence of advanced technology, even contact with something not of this earth? If so, the fear isn't about Egypt's history alone. It is about humanity's place in the cosmos. This isn't just theory. We've seen it before. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets describing pre-flood civilizations were written off as myth until sites like Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old, proved otherwise. In Mesoamerica, Maya codices were burned by Spanish conquerors, erasing knowledge that rivaled European science. The Coptic scroll that spoke of pyramids before language burned in a fire at the precise moment it could have rewritten history. This is not random loss. It is a pattern, a way of managing knowledge. The inventory stela locked away in Cairo, underground. Chambers sealed, robots stopped before they can pass through doors. All of it bricks in a wall of silence. It is not just about protecting the past, but about guarding the present. For if Giza was the work of a forgotten people with knowledge of the stars and mathematics beyond our own, then pharaohs become caretakers, not creators. Human history becomes fragile, cyclical, uncertain. The guardians of this silence, governments, institutions, scholars, may fear not just the truth, but its echo. That we are not the summit of progress, but only one moment in a cycle of civilizations rising and falling. And as you drift into sleep, imagine standing under the desert stars, the Great Pyramid glowing pale in the night, The tunnels sealed, the scroll burned, the doors locked, but the stones still whisper. Their silence is not empty. It is a question, carried through the centuries. What are they so afraid we will find? Now we approach the heart of the mystery, the technology itself. How could such precision, invisible joints, and flawless angles have been achieved over 4,500 years ago? Was it the simple work of copper chisels and human hands, or the echo of something far greater, something we still cannot explain? BCE, using ropes, ramps, and copper chisels. Yet the closer we examine the evidence, the less convincing this explanation becomes. It feels as though the pyramid was shaped with methods and knowledge that lie far outside the scope of its age. Tools that do not match the timeline we assign them. Think of the sheer scale. The Great Pyramid holds enough stone to build a wall encircling a small nation, its blocks transported from quarries sometimes hundreds of miles away. The granite of the king's chamber, brought from Aswan nearly 800 kilometers to the south, was carved with a precision so fine that not even the thinnest blade of paper can slip between the joints. And yet, modern experiments show that copper tools, the strongest widely available to the Egyptians, struggle even with limestone. Granite, one of the hardest natural stones, would have been beyond their reach. To achieve joints this flawless, to polish blocks to such smoothness, workers would have required instruments of durability and refinement, perhaps bronze or iron, materials not believed to be in common use during the Old Kingdom. The logistics alone are staggering. Moving a block weighing 15 tons across desert plains, then raising it hundreds of feet into the air and positioning it with sub-inch accuracy, would challenge even modern cranes and laser-guided machinery. Yet we are told it was done with sleds, wooden rollers, and the muscle of men guided only by starlight and water channels. And then there is the matter of orientation. The base of the pyramid is aligned with the 4 cardinal directions with an error of only 0.05 degrees, a feat that even modern engineers armed with GPS and satellites find difficult at this scale. The Egyptians had no compasses, no theodolites, yet they aligned 13 acres of stone to true north with uncanny fidelity. The base, covering this vast area, is so level that its greatest variation is only 2.1 centimeters. Achieving this on an uneven limestone plateau would have required surveying instruments and methods that leave no trace in the historical record. Inside, the architecture speaks of brilliance. The Grand Gallery, with its towering corbelled ceiling, distributes millions of tons of stone in such a way that the structure has resisted earthquakes, erosion, and centuries of human intrusion. This is not the clumsy result of trial and error, but the clear design of minds who understood physics, geometry, and structural integrity in ways we usually associate with the modern era. And still, it is not just the construction that feels extraordinary. It is the design itself. The narrow shafts of the king's chamber, almost impossible to access, align with Orion's belt and the North Star as they appeared around 2450 BCE. Such precision would have required knowledge of the Earth's slow axial wobble, a cycle lasting nearly 26,000 years. Egyptian texts describe stars used to track the flooding of the Nile, yet none suggest the calculation of such immense astronomical cycles. The pyramid's very dimensions seem to encode universal truths. Divide its perimeter by twice its height, and the number resolves into 2p. Its slope embeds the golden ratio, phi, with remarkable precision. These constants were not merely approximated, They were inscribed into stone within fractions of a percent. Egyptian writings on mathematics mostly describe practical measures for land and grain, not the encoding of cosmic ratios. Even more curious, multiply the pyramid's height by 43,200, and it mirrors the polar radius of the Earth. Measure its base perimeter, scale it by the same factor, and it reflects the planet's equatorial circumference. This number is not arbitrary. It is tied to the cycle of precession, linking the pyramid directly to Earth's dimensions and movements. Knowledge. That, in theory, should not have been possible until many centuries later. This level of sophistication brings us to a haunting possibility. Could the Great Pyramid be the legacy of a technology now forgotten, or perhaps one that we never truly understood? Copper chisels, wooden ramps, and simple manpower fall short of explaining its mastery. Some researchers suggest stranger alternatives: resonant sound waves, advanced stone-shaping techniques, or methods of lifting and moving that defy what we call ancient. Lie back, close your eyes, and let the desert winds carry you to another time. Tonight, we journey into the mystery of the Great Pyramid, a monument that has stood in silence for over 4,500 years, yet whispers secrets older still. Beneath the sands of Giza, tunnels and shafts stretch into darkness. Some end abruptly, others seem to lead nowhere, as if guarding truths not meant to be easily found. In the 1990s, a tiny robot crawled into one such shaft inside the Queen's chamber. It discovered a small stone door, sealed tight, with copper fittings unlike anything seen in Egypt. Was it a symbolic gateway, a hidden chamber, or a message left by the builders to those who would come after? The mystery remains unsolved, locked in silence. When we look closer at the pyramid itself, the questions only deepen. Each block weighs tons, some transported from quarries hundreds of miles away. The granite in the king's chamber came from Aswan, nearly 800 kilometers to the south, cut and polished with such precision that a single sheet of paper cannot slip between the joints. Modern tools struggle to match this craftsmanship, and yet the ancients, with no iron, no steel, no wheels, somehow achieved it. The alignment of the pyramid to true north is so exact, an error of only a fraction of a degree, that even builders, today armed with satellites and GPS, would find it difficult to replicate. The base is level to within centimeters, despite resting on uneven bedrock. Inside, the grand gallery rises with perfect symmetry, its corbelled ceiling carrying the weight of millions of stones as though designed by an engineer who understood physics far beyond their age. The more we search, the stranger it becomes. The air shafts from the king's chamber point directly to Orion's belt and the North Star, precisely as they appeared around 2450 BCE. The very dimensions of the pyramid seem to hold secrets of the Earth itself. Its height multiplied by a mysterious number reveals the planet's radius. Its base length encodes the circumference. How could an ancient people, with no records of advanced astronomy or higher mathematics, have known such truths? Some whisper of lost technologies, stone cut not by copper chisels, but by methods we no longer understand. Others point to legends from faraway lands, Sumerian texts of gods shaping worlds with divine tools, Indian epics of stones lifted by sound and light. The idea seems impossible. And yet, around the world, other monuments echo the same enigma. Stonehenge in England, the Cyclopean walls of Peru, the massive trilithons of Baalbek in Lebanon, the carved pillars of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, older than writing itself. Different lands, different people, and yet the same impossible skill. Was there once a forgotten civilization that carried this knowledge across the world? And then, a more daring idea. Could these wonders be whispers not of human hands, but of something beyond? Some believe the precision of Giza is too great, too perfect, to belong solely to man. They speak of visitors from the stars, sharing wisdom before vanishing into myth. A theory dismissed by many, yet still lingering, like the desert wind through ancient stones. But perhaps the truth is even more haunting. Perhaps the pyramid was not a tomb, not a palace, but a message. Its builders may have encoded eternal knowledge into stone, mathematics, astronomy, and the very shape of our earth, so that long after papyrus crumbled and empires fell, their wisdom would remain. A monument not for a king, but for time itself. And as we drift deeper into this mystery, another legend rises from the sea. The story of Atlantis, told by Plato, of a civilization of astonishing power and knowledge, lost in a single night to floods and earthquakes. An empire said to lie beyond the Pillars of Hercules, across the waters we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis, with its grand temples, canals, and palaces of shining stone. Atlantis, whose people mastered the stars and seas only to vanish without a trace. Could the Great Pyramid be its legacy? A final echo of a world that perished, leaving behind a message carved in stone? The Sphinx, weathered by rains older than Egypt itself, seems to nod silently toward that forgotten age. So tonight, as the desert sky unfolds its stars above the Great Pyramid, imagine its silent stones speaking across time. Imagine a wisdom that once touched the earth, now waiting patiently for us to remember. A message hidden not in words, but in symmetry, in alignment, in the language of eternity. And as you close your eyes, let these questions drift into your dreams. Was Giza the work of Egypt alone, or the last surviving memory of a world we have lost? Sleep well, traveler. The mystery will still be here tomorrow. Water erosion on the Sphinx, as noted by geologist Robert Schoch, suggests it dates not to 2500 BCE, but to a much earlier time, between 7,000 and 10,000 years ago, when the Sahara was green and heavy rains fell. This places it within the same era described by Plato for the fall of Atlantis, around 9600 BCE, at the end of the African humid period when fertile lands turned to desert. The Great Pyramid itself encodes numbers like pi, phi, and even Earth's dimensions, hinting at a level of astronomy and geometry far greater than what we usually assign to the Fourth Dynasty. Its alignment to true north within half a degree, and its base leveled to within just a couple of centimeters, suggests techniques that go far beyond copper chisels and sheer manpower. Could it have been the work of survivors from Atlantis, carrying their fading knowledge to the Nile to build a monument that would outlast time itself? The idea feels less impossible when we look around the globe. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, dated to 9600 BCE, rises with massive stone pillars weighing over 20 tons, decorated with animal reliefs and aligned to the stars. This was built before writing, before agriculture, challenging everything we think about prehistoric peoples. Off Japan's coast lies Yonaguni, a submerged stone complex with terraces and geometric angles, possibly from 10,000 years ago when sea levels were lower. In Bolivia, Pumapunku holds stone blocks carved with laser-like precision, beyond anything the Inca could have managed with their tools. These sites, like Giza, share a striking hallmark. They appear suddenly, fully formed, without gradual development, as if drawn from a memory of lost knowledge. Could Atlantis, or a civilization like it, have spread this wisdom before vanishing in catastrophe? Even the Giza plateau itself hides clues. Radar scans in 2008 revealed chambers and tunnels beneath the pyramids and sphinx, too symmetrical to be natural. The Osiris shaft, with its empty stone box and strange acoustic qualities, feels more like a relic of a forgotten ritual than a tomb. Ancient texts, long since lost, spoke of beacons of stone built before language, echoing Plato's descriptions of Atlantean architecture. Egyptian records like the Inventory Stelae suggest pharaohs such as Khufu and Thutmose IV were not the builders, but restorers, hinting that the monuments were inherited from a much earlier time. If that were true, what kind of civilization could achieve such feats? Plato described Atlantis as a society of great engineers, building harbors, canals, and temples that rivaled anything in Greece. The Great Pyramid, composed of over 2.3 million blocks weighing up to 15 tons, placed with millimeter precision, reflects mastery in mathematics, logistics, and engineering. Its alignment with Orion's belt and the pole star connects it to the 25,120-year precession of the equinoxes, an astronomical cycle far beyond the knowledge recorded in dynastic Egypt. The absence of hieroglyphs inside, unlike other tombs, suggests a culture that valued eternal symbols, geometry, numbers, and universal design over language. Perhaps the pyramid itself was intended as a time capsule, storing eternal truths in stone, meant to survive the destruction they foresaw. This ties into the legend of the Hall of Records, a chamber said to lie beneath the Sphinx. Mystic Edgar Casey claimed it contained Atlantean writings, tools, and even technologies meant to be revealed when humanity was ready. Radar scans in the 1980s and 2000s detected voids beneath the monuments, and robots exploring shafts in the Great Pyramid discovered sealed doors, one in 1993 and another in 2002, with copper fittings, as though marking thresholds. Some believe these could lead to hidden archives of knowledge. Yet despite the potential, Egyptian authorities have long dismissed such discoveries, refusing further exploration, which only fuels speculation of what they might already know. These mysteries are not limited to Egypt. The Sumerian Enuma Elish speaks of an age before the flood, shaped by gods wielding divine tools. The Indian Mahabharata describes cities and weapons that sound eerily like science fiction. Myths across cultures share a common thread, a golden age of knowledge destroyed in catastrophe, leaving only fragments behind. Around 4000 BCE, when the Sahara dried and forced migrations to the Nile, Egypt rose to prominence. If Atlantis existed, its survivors could have carried fragments of their legacy there, encoding them in stone for future generations. The erosion of the Sphinx, the hidden tunnels, the precision of the pyramids, all may be echoes of a world now forgotten. And yet, silence surrounds these possibilities. Excavations at Giza are tightly controlled, with discoveries that challenge the accepted timeline often ignored or suppressed. Radar scans, robot findings, and ancient texts vanish into obscurity, while the official story remains unchanged. Perhaps, hidden beneath the sands, lies not only Egypt's past, but the memory of a lost world. For some, the silence around Giza suggests a fear not of stones, but of ideas. If the Great Pyramid was built by a civilization long forgotten, then the pharaohs may not have been its true architects, but merely inheritors of a legacy they could never replicate. It would mean that history is not a straight climb to progress, but a cycle of rise, fall, and forgetting. The legend of Atlantis captures this possibility. Whether it was a real place or a symbolic tale, it reminds us that entire worlds can vanish beneath the waves, leaving only fragments behind. Imagine its survivors, scattering across distant lands, leaving one final message in stone beneath Egypt's sky. The Great Pyramid and the Sphinx might be echoes of that memory, monuments built not for glory, but as a warning that knowledge can be lost. Yet the mystery of Giza is not just in what we see, but in what we hear. Step into the king's chamber, and you enter a room of perfect granite, blocks so tightly fitted that even a razor cannot slip between. Speak softly, and your voice lingers in the air. Hum a low note, and the walls seem to respond, resonating, as though tuned to a hidden frequency. This is not imagination. It is measurable. Acoustic researchers have shown that the chamber amplifies certain frequencies, especially around 110 Hz, creating vibrations that can be felt in the body. The granite itself, rich in quartz, behaves like a natural tuning fork, sustaining sound with uncanny precision. It is as if the chamber was designed not as a tomb, but as an instrument. The mystery deepens beneath the plateau in the Osiris shaft. Carved 30 meters into bedrock, this chamber swallows sound in strange ways. Whispers travel clearly while stronger voices seem muted, as if the stone itself chooses which tones to carry. Tests reveal that it too resonates at low frequencies that can alter human perception, creating an almost dreamlike state. For the ancient Egyptians, sound was sacred. Their myths tell of a universe spoken into being, of creation born from vibration. But the acoustics of Giza hint at something more, not just ritual, but technology. Across the world, in Malta and Peru, ancient temples were shaped to resonate, with the same haunting tones, suggesting a forgotten tradition of using sound as a tool. Some modern engineers have wondered if this was more than spirituality. Could resonance itself have been a form of power? The quartz-filled granite of the king's chamber is capable of producing tiny electrical charges when it vibrates, a principle studied by scientists like Nikola Tesla. Perhaps, in some distant age, the pyramid was not only a monument but a machine, one built to harness the hidden energies of the earth. The acoustics of Giza may not be an accident. Some researchers suggest they could be part of a larger system, a subterranean counterpart designed to resonate in harmony with the pyramid above. If that is true, then the question becomes even bolder. Who could have possessed such knowledge? The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were master builders, but their texts speak of chisels, levers, and copper tools, not advanced acoustics or piezoelectric effects. And inside the Great Pyramid, something is missing: hieroglyphs. Unlike nearly every other Egyptian tomb, the walls here are silent. No prayers, no carvings, no claim of ownership. This absence suggests a purpose far greater than a burial chamber. Whispers of a lost civilization echo in these voids. Legends tell of ancient scrolls, destroyed before they could be translated, that spoke of beacons of stone built before. Language. The Sphinx, weathered by rains more than 7,000 years old, supports this possibility, as does the hidden network of chambers beneath the plateau, engineered with precision as if they were once part of a forgotten infrastructure. This brings us back to Atlantis. Plato described it as a civilization of advanced engineers. one that fell beneath the sea but left fragments of its knowledge scattered across the world. Could its survivors have come to the Nile, building monuments not as tombs, but as messages? If so, the acoustic properties of the pyramid and the Osiris shaft may be echoes of that legacy, remnants of a technology designed to harness sound itself, perhaps for healing, for communication, or even for energy. And yet the story does not end there. Again and again we find a pattern of concealment, sealed tunnels, silent robots, missing records. Modern authorities restrict access to the most sensitive sites at Giza. The official explanation is preservation, but some whisper another reason. Perhaps the truth hidden beneath the stones is too powerful or too unsettling to reveal. This silence is not unique to Egypt. Off the coast of India, the sunken city of Dwarka is said to contain structures of advanced design, yet exploration is limited. In Mesopotamia, ancient tablets speak of divine weapons that could command sound and light, dismissed today as myth. Across the world, the same echoes remain: monuments, ruins, and half-erased stories pointing to a forgotten science. If such a civilization existed, it would challenge everything we believe about human progress. It would suggest that we are not the first to harness forces we barely understand. Some have even gone further, asking if the builders were not entirely human at all. In 1968, author Erich von Däniken popularized a radical idea that extraterrestrial visitors may have influenced or even constructed the monuments of the ancient world. The precision of Giza seems to support such speculation. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of less than 1/20th of a degree, something even modern surveyors would find difficult without advanced instruments. Its air shafts point to Orion's belt and the pole star, as they appeared in the sky thousands of years ago, revealing astronomical knowledge far beyond what Egypt is thought to have known. Mathematical constants are encoded within its stones. Divide the pyramid's perimeter by its height, and you arrive at 2p. Its slope reflects the golden ratio. Its base mirrors the dimensions of the Earth itself. These are not coincidences. They are signs of a universal language, geometry, the language of the cosmos. And still, the pyramid refuses to tell us its story. No inscriptions, no records, only precision carved in stone. Perhaps the builders spoke through mathematics because it was a language that could outlast empires, a message not for their time, but for ours. Whether born of human genius, a lost civilization, or something beyond the stars, the Great Pyramid of Giza remains a monument to the impossible. Its silence hums with questions we have not yet learned how to answer. From the air, vast lines stretch across deserts, mysterious marks whose purpose remains unknown. Were they signals for skyward visitors? As Erich von Däniken suggested, the precision-cut stones at Pumapunku in Bolivia defy Inca tools. The colossal megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, some weighing up to 800 tons, challenge even modern engineering. Across the globe, these sites share a hallmark. They appear suddenly, fully formed, with no clear technological predecessors, as if gifted by a source beyond Earth. Ancient texts echo similar themes. The Sumerian Anunnaki, described as gods descending from the heavens, were said to teach humanity the skills of civilization. Could beings like them have guided the construction of Giza, leaving monuments as silent proof of their presence? Beneath the plateau, the underground network adds another layer of mystery. Radar scans in 2008 revealed chambers and tunnels laid out with geometric precision, suggesting infrastructure older than the pharaohs. The Osiris shaft, with its empty stone box and strange acoustics, resonates at frequencies that alter perception, hinting at purposes tied to sound or energy. Could these spaces be remnants of technology left behind for communication, energy production, or even interstellar signaling? Sealed doors within the pyramid shafts, discovered by robots in 1993 and 2002, bear copper pins, metals sacred to the Egyptian gods, symbols of divine power. Were these markers for a technology we cannot yet understand, left by those who knew? Their creations would endure long after their visit. And then there is the silence. The Egyptian authorities, through the Supreme Council of Antiquities, have consistently restricted access to Giza's hidden spaces. Radar anomalies beneath the Sphinx, robot discoveries, and historical accounts of underground chambers are dismissed as nothing. This pattern of concealment suggests not fear of mere artifacts, but of ideas that could upend our understanding of human history. Ancient stories reinforce this possibility. Hindu texts describe vimanas, flying machines engaged in aerial battles with advanced technology. The Book of Enoch speaks of watchers descending from the heavens to teach forbidden knowledge. The Dune people of Mali recount guidance from beings who came from the stars. Across cultures, myths share a common thread: contact with advanced entities shaping early civilizations. Giza's anomalies, the precision, the cosmic alignments, the silence, fit this narrative, hinting at a connection to intelligence beyond Earth. But why leave such monuments? Why endure for 4,500 years of earthquakes and invasions? The pyramid's design is a message built for geological time. Its mathematical codes, P, F, and even measures reflecting the Earth's dimensions, are universal, readable by any civilization capable of measurement. Unlike papyrus or clay, which decay, the pyramid endures. Unlike hieroglyphs, which require translation, its language is mathematics itself, a message that transcends culture, language, or belief. Its silence is not emptiness, but strategy, ensuring that knowledge survives the collapse of empires and the forgetting of gods. The pyramid's ratios are remarkable. Divide its perimeter, 921.6 meters by its height, 146.6 meters, and you obtain 6.2857 within a fraction of 2p. Its slope, 51.84 degrees, embeds the golden ratio. Multiply the height by 43,200 and you approximate Earth's polar radius. Multiply the perimeter by the same factor and you match the equatorial circumference. These numbers reflect deliberate calculation, a universal language that transcends time. Other ancient sites echo this design. Stonehenge aligns with the solstices. The megaliths of Baalbek hint at a lost science. Submerged terraces off Japan suggest engineering built to withstand rising seas. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to 9,600 BCE, predates agriculture and writing, yet reveals sophistication that challenges our understanding. These places, like Giza, feel like anchors, built to survive disasters that erased their creators. The Great Pyramid, with its cosmic alignments and precise mathematics, could be the greatest of these anchors, a time capsule safeguarding knowledge for a world recovering from collapse. Perhaps it was built in anticipation of catastrophe. The end of the African humid period around 4000 BCE transformed the Sahara from green paradise to desert, displacing populations to the Nile. Plato's Atlantis, swallowed by the sea 9,000 years before his time, may reflect such events. Whether the builders were Atlantean, extraterrestrial, or part of a lost human culture, they created Giza as a safeguard, a monument designed not for kings or glory, but to preserve knowledge through the chaos of time. Surviving. Earthquakes, invasions, and 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid proves it was built for geological time, not human reigns. Its silence speaks volumes. No hieroglyphs, no royal claims, ensuring its message is universal, meant for any civilization capable of measuring its truths. The pyramid's acoustics, as we have explored, deepen this purpose. The king's chamber resonates at frequencies like 110 Hz, inducing calm or altered states, while the Osiris shaft amplifies whispers in uncanny ways. These properties hint at a technology of sound, perhaps designed to connect with cosmic forces or preserve knowledge through vibration. Could the pyramid itself be a machine for memory, its chambers tuned to encode information in ways we have yet to comprehend? Nikola Tesla, who studied resonance and energy, speculated that ancient structures could harness the Earth's natural forces. The granite of the Great Pyramid, rich in quartz, might act as a piezoelectric conductor, generating charges under vibration. Its precision, alignments, and silence suggest a purpose beyond ritual, a technology meant to endure. And yet a haunting question remains. Why hide this knowledge? Sealed tunnels, halted robots, burned scrolls, all point to a deliberate effort to keep Giza's secrets buried. Egyptian authorities, backed by UNESCO, restrict access to sensitive sites, dismissing radar anomalies and robot discoveries as nothing. If the pyramid is a repository for future generations, perhaps the truth it holds about a lost civilization, advanced technology, or even extraterrestrial origins is too disruptive. It would upend the narrative of the pharaohs as creators, suggesting they were caretakers, inheriting wonders they could honor but not claim. The pattern of concealment extends beyond Egypt. In Mesoamerica, Mayan knowledge was destroyed by conquistadors. In Mesopotamia, texts hinting at pre-flood civilizations were dismissed as myths, until sites like Göbekli Tepe proved otherwise. The Great Pyramid, with its universal codes, might have been built to survive such losses. Its builders, human or otherwise, chose stone over words, geometry over language, knowing that civilizations fade, but numbers endure. The pyramid is a reset point, a beacon for a future that may one day need to rediscover pi, phi, or Earth's place in the cosmos, a lesson carved for a world reborn from ruin. Welcome, seekers of the eternal shadows, to the final chapter of our journey. I am Mr. H, your guide through the veiled enigmas of time, where the sands of Giza cradle truths too profound for our waking minds. Together, we have traced the Sphinx's water-worn scars, followed the cosmic codes of the pyramids, explored silent chambers, and descended into hidden tunnels. We have seen Khufu and Thutmose IV not as builders, but as restorers of a heritage far older. We have listened to the pyramid's resonant hum, a symphony of ancient physics, and dared to consider extraterrestrial guidance, lost civilizations, and the legend of Atlantis. As the desert night deepens and stars wheel overhead, the tapestry of Giza's enigma comes into view. It is not a shape of kings or gods, not a monument to glory or death. It is the shape that memory forgot, a repository built not for the past, but for the future. The Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the entire plateau. They stand as a silent archive, A vault of knowledge designed to survive the collapse of worlds, waiting for a time when humanity might remember what it has lost. Close your eyes. Let the rhythm of this tale carry you. The Sphinx, with erosion carved by rains 7,000 years ago, predates the desert, a witness to a forgotten era. The Great Pyramid, its base aligned to true north with impossible precision, encodes pi and phi, mirrors Earth's curvature, and tracks the precession of the equinox. Its empty king's chamber resonates with cosmic harmonies. The underground network hints at an infrastructure for purposes we cannot yet name. Sealed doors glint with copper pins, warnings from another time. Together, these clues form a narrative, not of triumph, but of inheritance. A legacy from a lost civilization that foresaw oblivion. Perhaps Atlantis, perhaps another advanced society, left these monuments as a safeguard. They encoded their wisdom in universal mathematics, knowing languages and empires crumble, but numbers endure. Imagine a world on the brink, rains failing, seas rising, societies fracturing. The builders aligned the pyramid to Orion's belt, creating a celestial clock. They tuned its chambers to resonate, preserving knowledge in vibrations, guiding seekers through altered states. The Sphinx, half lion, half god, marks the equinox sunrise, a record of deluges and floods. This is no tomb for a king. It is a library for humanity, a repository where the shape of memory endures even when memory itself is forgotten. The conspiracy of silence now makes sense. Modern authorities guard Giza not only for preservation, but because its truth challenges our sense of progress. Advanced knowledge has risen and fallen long before recorded history. The burned Coptic scroll, the sealed doors, the dismissed radar. Scans, they protect a story that humanity is not yet ready to grasp. Even extraterrestrial guidance fits into this framework. The pyramid becomes a cosmic repository, a message waiting for us to evolve enough to understand it. Yet the pyramid's true power lies in its patience. It demands nothing. Its stones endure, its codes wait for a future civilization to measure anew. Its ratios teach harmony. Its alignments map the planet. Its chambers guide listening to the universe's hum. The Great Pyramid is the shape that memory forgot, so enduring it outlives forgetting. A monument not to remember the past, but to ensure the future remembers how to begin again. Let the weight of Giza's enigma settle upon you. These stones are not mere monuments. They are a question, a challenge, a gift. They ask us to look beyond the stories, to question the silence, to measure the truths hidden in plain sight. Whether built by a lost civilization, guided by extraterrestrials, or born of Atlantis's final breath, Giza stands as a repository for what matters most. Knowledge that binds us to the cosmos, constants that remain when all else fades. In this shape, memory endures, forgotten yet unforgotten, waiting with the patience of stone for the day humanity is ready to remember.